Hey, sister.
Hey, sister.
Join me, Courtney Lewis,
And me, Carly Ferguson.
in our conversational podcast about everyday situations.
You can count on us to tell it to you straight with our own sisterly spin.
Consider this a phone call with your own Southern sisters as we discuss with you personal accountability, healthy relationships, managing responsibilities, and contributing to society.
Each episode will consist of straight talk and a call to action.
Your sisters are calling.
Thanks for answering.
Welcome to Hey Sister. This is episode 5, Christmas Stalking, with Cynthia Anderson, who you'll hear us call Cindy Anderson in this episode. And by the way, you did hear that right. That was stalking with an L, as in following or creeping up on. So not the kind that you hang on the fireplace. But before we explain the reasoning behind this title or introduce our amazing guest expert today, Carly, you've just got to tell our sisters about the game.
Yes, the game, where the name derives from here. As kids, we had a tradition in our family around Christmas or Christmas Eve. We would get together and have an opportunity to share our gifts or the things that have been given to us by God in forms of music, art, story, and Christmas spirit. And we would gather together and present those things that we had worked on. It was in good fun, a little competition, but mostly just fun, right? We would just share the things that we'd worked hard on and everybody would clap for each other.
A lot of competition. A lot of competition.
From some.
From some. Whatever. You were in there too. But it was the greatest Christmas Eve program. We loved it as kids.
Yeah, it was super fun. And we are an extra family, I guess you could say. So we got really into that. But as we got older, there comes a point in time where you're telling your spouse how you have to make this art project, and that doesn't really go over as well. You feel a little less mature in doing these same things. So we changed it up and we decided, let's all make our own game. And so Courtney, what was your game?
Cam was really excited the year that we transitioned from doing the Christmas Eve talent show, art show, storytelling to more of a create a game and share it. So the game we created was a deal or no deal type game. So we made it a Christmas themed game, but I really love the game you created. So deal or no deal is not what we're talking about.
No, but it was just so cute. So then I had one and this was just fun. So I went back into everyone's Facebook profiles and found things that they had posted and then printed them out so that I could read them out. And I drew them from a stalking. So we called it Facebook stalking and I'd share it. And then we guessed who posted that. And it was pretty funny. So if you ever want to try something, especially now with how frequently we use social media for things, it's kind of fun to go back down memory lane that way. With that, we just had a ball laughing at what people had posted or forgotten they had posted. Mom had posted this crazy video of a dog being saved by a dolphin with this crazy music in the background. I guess she had seen it and accidentally shared it to her wall. So we got a good laugh watching that back and trying to guess who posted it. She couldn't even remember.
Perfect. I appreciate that explanation. And we're going to dive into that and use that same play on words to talk about Christmas stalking today. So Facebook stalking and now Christmas stalking. And the feelings of burnout that may come from trying to do it all and comparing our efforts during the holiday season and year round to what others are doing and sharing about on social media. So we have with us today a guest expert who Carly and I have both been blessed enough to know and learn from throughout our lives. Cindy Anderson is a wife and mother of 7 children and a grandmother of 26 grandchildren. She is one of the wisest women we know. She is a published author of a book that Carly and I both highly recommend called One Mom to Another. Be kind to yourself, embrace the good, and find joy in the everyday. On a personal note, Carly and I grew up with Cindy's kids in the DFW area in Texas, and we can vouch for the fact that she knows what she's talking about as she's raised some incredible human beings. Also, Cindy was my Sunday school teacher when I was about 12 years old. Halfway through the year of her teaching me, our family moved away for a year to live next door to my grandmother so that my mom could be her caretaker during the day. It was a difficult transition for me at first, but one thing I looked forward to every week was a note from Cindy. She mailed me an uplifting scripture verse on a hole-punched index card every week that I would put on a small keyring she gave everyone in our class at the beginning of the year. It was an incredible, kind gesture and a great spiritual boost in my life. As a mom myself, I am even more appreciative of the time and extra effort that must have taken. This is just the kind of woman Cindy is. Today, we are honored to have her with us so we can all take notes at her digital feet. Cindy, welcome to Hey Sister.
Thank you for having me, and I'm really excited. And I would like you to send me that introduction so I can read it on days when I'm not feeling so good about myself.
I have a feeling that your kids always let you know how wonderful you are because you really are just a bright light in everybody's life. So we're so glad to have you here. Carly and I, we've been talking about having you here since we started planning the podcast. So we're just so glad you're here.
No, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you.
Give us an update. What is the current age span of your kids and their family situation?
The span of my children is 14 years, and my youngest is 29. Once my kids get married, I lose track of their ages. I don't know why. It just happens. Like you said, we currently have 26 grandchildren. My kids are all over. I've got 2 in Texas, 3 in Utah, 1 in Wyoming, and 1 in Virginia.
A great span of family everywhere. So I'm sure that holidays are fun if y'all get a chance to get together.
They are. Yeah. They're loud. Can I just say that they're loud? You think when your kids are little, they're so noisy. And you just think when they get older, they're going to be quiet and these quiet, well-behaved adults. And it never happens. They get loud. They walk through your house and this composed adult turns into a kid and they're wrestling and they're just make a lot of noise.
That is good to know to prepare myself.
Yeah, Carly, you've already got 3 boys, so I think you do need to prepare for that in the future.
Oh my goodness.
So, Cindy, you wrote a book that Carly and I both love. One Mom to Another has been an incredible book that I just want to keep on my nightstand, except it's on my phone. Carly has the hard copy and I'm envious. I might just have to go buy a hard copy just so I can thumb through it. But I want to talk a little bit today about this idea, this Christmas stocking that we're talking about, and this idea of when it gets time to be the Christmas season, we notice all the things that other people are doing. And even just like right now, it's easy to see all these things that are going on in other people's lives and take that on in your own life and say, well, I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. And just by way of example, I looked on Facebook just to get a quick glimpse of what people are doing in my small group of friends, right? So I'm seeing somebody goes and gets a fresh Christmas tree that they cut down themselves. And it's a big part of their Christmas. Other friends of mine are graphic designers. And so they design their own Christmas card, not just drag and drop a picture into a photo service. They like literally design from scratch their own Christmas card, have it printed on super awesome paper.
Oh my goodness.
Like big into Christmas cards. Another friend does a huge light show that syncs to lights in their front yard. I've got friends who are the coordinators for Angel Tree, and they're the ones who are coordinating all the families that need donations for Christmas presents. And not just that they're buying the presents, they're coordinating all of the efforts. Other friends have kids in the ballet and they're performing in the Nutcracker, and that becomes a huge commitment for their family. I have a friend who does a girls' night in your jammies and you do an ornament exchange, and there's just so many things going on. You have all these huge commitments and everybody has something that they bring to the table. So it's easy to feel overwhelmed at everything that's going on and maybe like you're not doing enough and where do you fit in the mix, but also do I join in and everything? I want to hear your thoughts on this time of year and what do you think about that?
I think it's a little crazy. We are bombarded with what a perfect Christmas is supposed to look like. We see our friends, we see other people doing these huge things on top of all of the holiday events. And I think we need a new way to look at things and a new way to measure and think what is good for our family and what works for us, and quit stalking social media and other people because they hopefully are doing what works well for their family. Mothers are individuals. We nurture differently. We do things differently. It would not be a surprise if we all do Christmas differently. And there's no right or wrong way. There's no have to, there's no, I feel guilty because I'm not saving the world during Christmas. We save the world every day. We get up in the morning and we rinse and repeat every single day. And so we don't have to put that pressure on us over the holidays.
Speaking of you just saying the word nurture, that reminded me of a quote that I love from your book. And it says, when we nurture from a place true to ourselves, we are better and more comfortable knowing what to do and how to do it. Including our children in the things we love enables us to build a connection, love, and trust that allows for many opportunities that we would not have to nurture our children any other way. And I just love that. When I first read this book, it wasn't Christmas time, but I think that that's true right now. And trying to find that family culture and find a way that you can nurture your children, your spouse, you can find what works for your family.
Mr. Rogers says the best gift you can give your children is allowing them to see you do things that make you happy. And I think that applies to Christmas. We do so many things that do not bring us joy. They bring us stress, and we just become kind of grumpy moms sometimes over it. And we can sit down and think about the things that we enjoy doing and what makes sense for us, and then allow our children to come into our joy and have that experience with them.
I love that. As you said, that joy can nurture, like the nurturing aspect with our children is that we're having traditions, and like it's a special opportunity around the holidays and Christmas in particular to have joy and for them to feel that joy emanate from us.
When I hear my children talk about their Christmas memories, first off, memories are not made just from one Christmas. So you're not going to make or break their childhood by one Christmas.
Okay.
But it's their Christmas experiences as a whole. And like we were saying, it's made more difficult when we have Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. I don't know what else you youngins watch or do, but showing this model of a perfect Christmas. And we get caught up in what we perceive to be the perfect picture of Christmas for our family. And we forget to look at the picture of Christmas through our own lens. And the only perfect Christmas is the one that fits your family. And if it includes a mess, noise, the things you bake not turning out, and other unplanned disasters, then it is more perfect than you realize, because then it's real. You've had a real Christmas. And that's the best thing you can give your kids.
Speaking of giving your kids, I listened to an episode on your podcast where you and your daughter, Stephanie, talk about nurturing and about what it means to be a successful mother. You talked about in that episode different ways that different women nurture. Could you touch on that a little bit and talk about ways that moms can nurture in different ways?
Yeah. Some of us nurture with food. Some of us like to play. Some of us nurture with books. Some of us nurture with crafts. Some of us nurture with music. And we look at another mother who, let's say, nurtures with food. They make treats for their kids. They make these meals from around the country for their children. And I would look at that and feel overwhelmed and think, I cannot do that. That is not me, but maybe I would feel like I needed to. And if I did that, it would be a disaster. I mean, it just would. But I love books and I love cuddling and I love music. And so I would nurture by reading books to them during the day or singing songs to them during the day. Maybe somebody else doesn't like to do that. And so if we are all trying to copy each other, thinking that each other has the best way of being a mother, then we're not nurturing our children from inside ourselves and from our soul and who we are. And things that are important to us get lost and they're not passed to our children. It's hard to be something that you're not, but it is so easy to be yourself. And it's so easy to have that natural nurturing that comes from inside of us, however that looks. And it doesn't really matter. I have a daughter-in-law. She loves to play. And so she takes her kids on hikes. They go out in the yard and play games. And it is so awesome. And it's just as awesome as another one of my daughter-in-laws who nurtures in a different way, doing what she does. In all instances, children feel loved, they feel safe, and they get to know their mothers. And I think that is so important, that our children know us, know what we stand for, know what is in our hearts, and know above all else that they are loved and accepted for who they are. They don't need to change. They don't need to look around at the other kids and be more like so-and-so, they just get to be themselves.
I think this idea of nurturing really applies at Christmas time too. Trying to incorporate the way you nurture into your family practices during the Christmas season. And that sometimes can be hard when you get married. I've found it's actually kind of hard sometimes because the way my husband was nurtured as a kid
right
was different than the way that I was nurtured, or the things that were important to his family. Like his mom nurtured in food.
Mm-hmm.
My mom nurtured more in experiences. For example, a big Christmas display with lights or a Christmas party would have been more important than traditional food that you have all year round that your kids can count on. So that's been one of those things where we're trying to find how we can best nurture our family and what we want our Christmas family culture to be. Overall, what we want our family culture to be. But at Christmas time, what do we put our time and our energy into? So
Right.
what advice do you have for us there, Cindy? Teach us some wisdom.
Well, as far as the blending in with your spouse, yeah, I think that's challenging. And I think we do talk a lot about moms and women at Christmas as if all of Christmas is on our shoulders.
Isn't it?
No, we have a spouse and they can be let in on the plan as well. But we have a tradition that we do every year, and it is born from two of our traditions. For my husband, he wanted to bring in the tradition of roasting hot dogs by the fire on Christmas Eve. And my mother and my stepfather started giving away the Christmas dinner. And then, because our Christmas dinner was given away, we would have pancakes for dinner.
When you say giving away your Christmas dinner, you're literally making a Christmas dinner and bringing
so
it?
Literally we would buy turkey and stuffing and potatoes and pies, everything you would have for a traditional Christmas dinner. And then we would put it in a box and give it to somebody.
What a cool tradition.
So my husband and I were talking and we said, okay, we like both of those traditions. How can we put them together? And my mother and my stepfather would just go do this by themselves. So we thought, we want our kids involved. So we came up with the idea that we would buy this traditional dinner, put it in a box, and then we would doorbell ditch. So the kids would, and it's gone into the grandkids. They came up with code names. I mean, it's just hysterical. And they would take this box to the door. And I don't know how the people in the house didn't hear them coming, but we never got caught. In 40 years, we've never gotten caught. And then they would ring the doorbell and they would all take off and run to the car down the street. And we lived in snow country for the first 20 years of our marriage. So you can just imagine kids of all ages. And Caroline is one of our youngest, and they have these snowsuits, where they can't move in them and they can't run. And they had one time where she slid on the ice and the big kids are going back to save the baby. And we had other kids yelling, save yourself. It was hysterical. We felt like kids needed to have skin in the game. They couldn't pay for the dinner. And sometimes we would take them shopping, depending on the family, but we would take them shopping and get some toys for the children. But that still wasn't their money. They had no skin in that game other than doing the doorbell ditch. And so we felt it was important that they did not have a traditional Christmas dinner. And so we did the pancakes and eggs and breakfast for dinner on Christmas night. But we did the drop off on Christmas Eve. And when we would come home, then we would roast the hot dogs in the fire. We melded those traditions and then also made it our own. It's been fun. And at the time, sometimes that was hard. It was late at night that we'd go do these things. And we were eating hot dogs in the fire at 9:00 at night. And we're like, why do we do this? But it was just always fun. And it's one of the main things my kids talk about.
That's wonderful. I think to all of this, it's really good because it reminds me to have confidence in my parenting and trust that I am supposed to be the mom to my kids, right? Mm-hmm. And so the Lord's entrusted them to me, and what we do is going to be beneficial to them with that love and care and support. And with your spouse, blending, right? That's one of the buzzwords. You're like, okay, I'm offering these things and you have these things. How can we make this our own? And what Courtney was saying, we had a different experience growing up than our spouses. And then around Christmas, it's time with family where they're doing something and it's highlighting a different aspect maybe of Christmas traditions. But it can be different. What I grew up with, I can say I loved that, but it didn't actually ring true to what I want to incorporate into my family. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to be held to what we did, but if there was something that I really did enjoy, we can make it creative. We don't have to stick exactly to it. We were talking, my husband and I, about this, and we were saying, well, my family, we grew up having scones Christmas morning, and I loved the scones, but we were talking about it and I was like, but I'm okay with doing something different that morning and maybe making it consistent. And so we were like, okay, well, let's try crepes. Like we'll do Christmas crepes. And I love the alliteration. So bonus points. We're just trying out these things. And so it's not like I'm holding to that every year. We must do Christmas crepes. But at this point, it was just kind of fun to both of us go back and forth about what we could do and come up with something together.
And I think one of the keys when you're saying that too, so maybe some of the things that we do are like our mother, but also, we can be different mothers than our mothers. That's great to be able to adapt because the way your mother does things and does Christmas is really an adaptation of her and your dad. And then you're different with you and your husband. And I think we have to be adaptable. I think it's okay to evaluate your traditions. I think it's okay to do different things every year. Kids, you do things once and it's a tradition. Mom, it's a tradition. Well, we just did it once last year. That's all we do. That's, but it's a tradition now.
You're held to this for the rest of your life.
That's right. And I just think every year you just see where you're at, what's going to bring you joy and what's going to bring you stress. What things are you doing for your children that they care or don't care about? I used to stress over my tree decorations. I had friends that just had these beautiful coiffed trees with themes, and it was their joy. They loved it. And I just thought, why isn't this my joy? Why can I not get this done? And I just realized my children don't care. They don't care. They would rather decorate the tree all lopsided with all their ornaments that they made throughout the years at school. So that's what we do. And I gave that up. I just thought that is not where I find joy. And my kids like doing their own thing. And so I just think we have to adapt, and we have to realize too that all these Christmas posts that we compare ourselves to have taken set directors hours to build. They probably take 100 pictures and then take the perfect picture and post it. So let's reframe what a successful Christmas looks like and be adaptable. Change your traditions around. Do something one year, don't do it the next year. If you enjoy baking a variety of cookies, if you enjoy a themed Christmas tree or Christmas caroling, or you like it having parties, do it. If you're not feeling it, don't.
All good points. And I love what Carly's saying is she wants to try Christmas crepes. Like maybe you want to stick with this for the rest of forever. Maybe you also want to change it. And I like that too. If you want to do it, stick with your tradition. I'm one who really lives for that idea that a kid would expect you to do it again. I would want to do the same thing over and over and over again. My husband and I are even looking at family vacation and planning one in the future. I'm like, oh, let's do the exact same thing we've done.
Right.
And he's more like, wait, what? Why would we do the exact same? I'm like, no, it'd be perfect. We just do the exact same thing again. That's just how I roll. I really like consistency, but I love this broadening because I think that's really important for us to remember as women and as the sisterhood that we're a part of with this podcast. If you've got a young family and you're trying to set a tradition, try something, see if it works. If you've got kids that are teenagers and nothing has worked in the past, that they're disconnected and maybe they don't get along. I don't even know. Actually, Cindy, I've never had a teenager. What do you do if your teenagers don't want to do the same thing? How do you make that work?
Well, I think you just come to terms that teenagers never want to do the same thing. Lower your expectations and just realize you're never going to please them all. But again, one of the things I talk about is that motherhood is this long game. And so Christmases can't be judged by the year. One year isn't going to set the mark of whether your Christmas has failed or not. One bad day doesn't mean you're a bad mother. It just means you had a rough day. And so the teenagers may just be a little rough, but this Christmas tradition that we do stuck. And so that never changes. But yeah, you could adapt. There are other things that you can adapt and do differently. I don't remember making a lot of accommodations for my teenagers at Christmas, but you just get used to them complaining. If one of my teenagers came to me and said, Mom, I would really love to do, and they told me what they wanted to do, I would move heaven and earth to do it. And I think it's not a bad idea to have a family meeting and say, okay, here comes the Christmas holiday. What are those things that are important to you? Is there something new that you'd like us to add? Something that you want to take away? I think that's a very productive way to approach teenagers. Let them feel like, I think teenagers, they just have no control over a life they feel that they should be in control over. So I think including them into that adult world as often as you can is so good for them. Let them make as many decisions as possible. And some are life-threatening, so you can't let them do that. Michael, to this day, still doesn't understand why I wouldn't let him jump off of our second room game wall down to the bottom of the house. So there are some things you just can't let him do. But I just really am a believer that you involve them as much as you can. But in the end, you cannot run around trying to please everybody because you just aren't going to do it. And again, all my kids are adults. None of them say, when I was a teenager, I hated Christmas. Everything rolls in. Their childhood just rolls into their adulthood. And they look at it in total. Probably my greatest thing with teenagers is include them, involve them, listen to what they have to say, make whatever accommodations you can make, and then move on. Especially if you have multiple ones. You are never going to please them all, ever.
I'm taking notes for the future from you and from other moms that I know that have teens right now.
And all teenagers are different. So you just have to kind of wish there was a textbook, but there just isn't.
I feel like if there was, you would have written it by now.
I think she did. She wrote the book on it. Like,
That's true. That's true.
to help us. Here we go.
I don't know. I mean, teenagers, you have somebody telling you what to do every day of your life, that you're doing it wrong. You figured out the world. You cannot understand why you have adults continually telling you what to do when you have figured life out, and it is just hard. They fire you and they cannot believe you keep showing up. And I don't mean to keep going back to those teenagers, but teenagers are amazing as well. You give teenagers a service project, something to do for other people, and they rock it. They are incredible. And to be a parent, to watch your kids learn how to come out of themselves and do something for somebody else at a time when the season might tend to be for a kid, what am I going to get for Christmas? There's nothing better you can do. There's nothing better to pull your family in and create bonds than to serve together as a family. They may grumble before you do some service, but they never grumble afterwards. And it's awesome. I would strongly encourage some sort of a reasonable, we don't have to go out and save the world, but some sort of a reasonable service project.
So, Cindy, whether you've got little kids or teenagers, you've mentioned to me before an idea of a Christmas plate. Can you talk about that analogy for us?
Oh, sure. I have a number of children who suffer from anxiety, and their worries build and build until it becomes just too much. They try to validate their worries and tell them that you do have a lot of things to worry about. Because the worst thing you can do is tell somebody, that's nothing, don't worry about it. And these are usually teenagers as well. But I tell them that you only have one plate that they can put them on, and I limit them to 3 things. So they have to choose their top 3 worries, put them on the plate, and then they can center their attention on those worries. And as they solve and work through a worry, they can take it off the plate, and then they can put another one on, but only 3 things. So if they have a worry that comes up and those 3 things still aren't resolved, then they have to choose which one to take off. Does that make sense?
Makes great sense in theory. And I'm glad to hear that it actually works for you, because the fact that you continue to say it means it's working. So that's wonderful.
It is. Anxieties are kind of funny, but if you can give them a structure, because anxieties have no logic or reason, but if you can somehow put a structure around it, they tend to go with that. I've had some success with that. So applying that same idea to Christmas traditions, I would say choose 3 things. I know that programs and recitals are not always optional. That's what fills those 2 weeks before Christmas. But in addition to all of those, just choose 3 things and let the rest go. And I would suggest, but you don't have to, include something that you and your spouse love, something your family loves, and something you can do for others. And I think that's a nice round way of figuring out what goes on that plate. And like we discussed, they can change over the years, depending upon your circumstances and what you feel like you want to do. Of all the things that I tried to do, of all the presents I spent time in line buying. Now, remember, I had children pre-Amazon. So if my kids were going to get presents, I had to actually go to the stores.
You must have really loved them.
I did. I would say so. That took a long time. But of all the presents that I spent that time buying, my children only remember and talk about decorating the tree with Bing Crosby album playing in the background, going to the theater on Christmas Day to watch a movie. That's one of our traditions that developed, and our yearly service project that I discussed, followed by roasting those hot dogs on the fire. They also don't let a Christmas go by without me baking my cinnamon rolls. But other than that, the memories are there. They remember when we did other things. But if you ask them, what are your top 3 things? That is what they'll tell you.
It sounds like you and your husband made that conscious decision pretty early on to have those be your 3 things, whether or not you labeled it as the 3 things on your Christmas plate, or you just somehow instinctually knew we're going to focus on these 3 areas. Because
Right.
with 7 kids, there had to be boundless numbers of Christmas parties and to-dos to squeeze into the mix.
They were all over the place. And the older they get, the more there is. And I just learned to let a lot of things go. There just were a lot of things we did not do. But what we did do meant something. And it meant something to all of us.
Those are all so inspiring too, to hear those traditions that you had in your family. And as we talked about before, with the Christmas stocking that we can sometimes do, that reminds me of a quote I heard you say. It says, although motherhood on its own cannot be put into a worldly construct of measurement, it would be wrong to think that we would never need any room for improvement, education, or emphasis on how and why we teach our children. Just as damaging as it is to feel like every day you fail, it is also damaging to not embrace opportunities for improvement. That just reminds me that, as we talked about before, it's okay to look at what somebody is doing and maybe sample it on this Christmas plate one year, or make a little room to try it out, maybe in a smaller dose. Like if you want to try to do your Christmas tree and make that a thing, maybe go for it in a small dose or something. And as Courtney was reading out these amazing, talented people that are in her newsfeed, I was like, I'm so impressed. But you can always try something and see if it resonates or not. And if not, then you can put it aside. But it just saves that space for having joy for other people and what brings them joy, without looking at yourself and your plate and comparing the two.
That's right. And we can be happy for what other people do, and we can recognize their talents and abilities without bringing it back to us, that because we don't have those talents, abilities, or an interest in those talent abilities, that makes whatever we are doing wrong. And there's always room for improvement, and there's always space for excitement for other people and what they do.
I've loved this analogy of the 3 things on your plate, whether it's for worries in general to help with anxiety, but especially at Christmas time, when I feel like maybe even if you don't have anxiety, it kind of feels like anxiety. It's like Christmas anxiety. You can easily get overwhelmed and feel very burned out just by what you see other people doing and that pressure you might feel if you are Christmas stalking and checking out what other people are doing and feeling like you're not doing it. We like this idea of the 3 things on your Christmas plate. Carly and I both agree. We love this. And Cindy, is it okay if we steal your idea and use that as our call to action this week?
Oh, absolutely. That would be great.
We want to encourage our sisters to work with your family this week. Talk to your spouse and your children if you have that construct in your household, and work together to come up with the 3 things that you want to have on your Christmas plate. Cindy mentioned a family meeting. That would be a great way to do it. And decide together what 3 things make it onto the plate. And as we're talking about it, I want to give my own personal example. I know Cindy shared hers. This year, what I've been thinking about is something that's important to my husband and I, mainly my husband, but I've incorporated it a little bit, making sugar cookies. That is something his mom did for their family growing up, and he loves to make sugar cookies. I am no baker, not a cook by any stretch of the imagination, but I've tried to incorporate this into my life, and I do it a little bit different. I don't just make sugar cookies because baking is not fun for me. I don't enjoy it, but I do love a good party. So we have a sugar cookie play date and kids come over and decorate cookies together. That's how I've turned that into something that I can get on board with. So it is for both of us. And then, of course, he gets all the sugar cookies after the party's over and while we're making them, and he freezes some for later. So anyway, he gets his fill there. And then something that's important to our family is being together with extended family. For years, because we've made the choice to live out of state from both families. I don't know if it really is even so much a choice, honestly. Like sometimes you go where the job is, but we are where we are. And we have to put it as one of the things on our plate that we see extended family, whether it's his family, my family. That's important to us, that our kids get to see their grandparents and their cousins. So that has to be one of the items on our plate. That means we have to miss out on some things, because that's a big amount of time to take off to fly. That's also a large amount of money to set aside to take a vacation like that to go see family. And then our third thing is taking something that I did for my childhood, the Christmas Eve program that Carly mentioned earlier that we did growing up. My kids aren't quite old enough to do all those things on their own yet, tell a Christmas story and all that. But we did do something a little different the last 2 years that has stuck, and that we want to incorporate and add into the Christmas Eve program, where the kids dress up and they reenact the birth of the Savior. So that's the other important thing for us, is Christmas Eve. We have to have a Christmas Eve program with our family, whether or not that looks like what I had growing up or a little bit different. That's the third and most important thing on our Christmas plate. But I am one who likes to fill my plate with a lot of things. So I try to sprinkle in as many other things as I can, going to other parties. And that doesn't burn me out. I know that would burn some out. And so I'm not saying that to sound like that's what everybody should do, but I know last year when we didn't do anything during Christmas season, I felt like it was the longest Christmas season ever because nothing was happening.
Yes.
And I missed out on that. So that might have been really peaceful and relaxing for some to have the world shut down and just be inside listening to Christmas music. That kind of killed me. That was not my favorite Christmas. And it was beautiful and it was a wonderful Christmas, but I like to have other things on my plate in addition to those 3 entrees.
Yeah. And I think too that those are 3 big things. And other things that sprinkle in that bring us joy, we go and do are easier to manage. But when we put 5, 6, 7 big things on our plate, even if we enjoy them, we are stressed. But there's always the other sprinklings. You got to have herbs and spices, right? You got to have a little bit other things. And you'll never get Christmas down to only 3 things. But 3 main things, 3 things that if everything else had to fall away, this is what you would do for Christmas.
Perfect. Carly, do you want to share the 3 things that you were thinking about for your family?
I love your 3 things that you shared. I'm still working on ours. So right now we've got like a good framework. We've got some elements we're going to try, but our kids are so small that it's a good testing time for us. But we've got a general 3 things that we do, but we don't have any kids in school yet. And I know there's a lot more things that happen and make the holidays so much more busy. We're choosing for ourselves right now, but one of them is service. So I love hearing different ideas of how people have given service around Christmas and the giving spirit. So that's just like the big thing. And then there are a couple other small things.
I love that honest perspective too, that you're still trying to decide what your 3 things are, and might even be that you leave your plate open to try new things, So Carly, I like that perspective.
I'll figure out the 3 things in a sense, but yeah, right now it's just service and having the spirit of giving incorporated, and then maybe Christmas crepes and something else.
Yeah.
Christmas crepes deserve a place on your plate. That's a good thing.
I love crepes. Well, Cindy, we have loved talking to you. We could listen to you for hours, and thankfully we can on your podcast. So with that, where can our sisters find you and learn more from you?
I have a website, onemomtoanother.com. All my information is on there. You can listen to my podcast, also called onemomtoanother.com. From my website, it is also available on all the platforms, Apple, all of them. I'm on Facebook, and they can email me at cynthia.anderson@onemomtoanother.com.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun. I forgot that we're recording. It just is like having a fun conversation with good friends.
We've learned so much from you from our childhood. It's hard not to remember any aspect of my childhood when you weren't there. We could learn from you all day. So we're so glad we got to learn from you today. And as a recap of our call to action this week, decide on the 3 things on your Christmas plate this holiday season so that you don't burn out from Christmas stocking. Come back next week for episode 6, Happy Pants, where you'll get to meet the 3rd sister in our family of origin, Cassidy Shane Roberts, in a fun episode about how to make joy a habit. Oh, hold on. My phone just started playing some song. A music app's not even open. There, I don't even know what just.
There's a funny meme, and it says that motherhood is like having a million tabs open, and you don't know which one's playing music or something, And it's like, where's the music coming from?
What's your grandkid count right now?
26.
26. Wow, I was just reading your book bio the other day, and it said at the time of writing the book you had 22. So way to go having 4 in like 3 years.
We had a busy year.
Way to go, pandemic.
Pandemic baby.
I think that's a wrap. Okay, here we go.
That's great.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Cindy. You're the best.